Officer of Intentwise. This is Expert Connect, and we're really excited to have Markus and Ilkka here today. They're both from the agency Dash, which is based in the Nordics. What's up, guys? How you doing today?
Hey, Alan. Good to see you.
Hey, all good, all good. How you doing?
Can't complain. So Markus, Ilkka, tell us about Dash. Tell us a little bit about yourselves. How did you get into this crazy industry called the retail media industry? Let's call it. And actually, one of the questions we're going to ask you later is like, how do you describe this industry? Do we call it the e-commerce industry, retail media? Are you an agency? What is it?
Yeah. That's a long question, and it will require a long answer. But yeah. So first of all, regards from Helsinki, Finland. Um, we are an agency based here and operating in the Nordic markets. We have some clients outside of the Nordics as well, so mainly from Northern Europe. Um, We have been around for 4.5 years, and in the Nordic terms, that's forever when it comes to Amazon. Um, Basically, Amazon is still at taking its very first steps in this region, and to be honest, the market is still relatively primitive. So, my name is Markus Varsikko. I'm the founder and the CEO of Dash Retail, and my personal history is that I've been in the online industry since the late 90s, started selling ads to Alta Vista, then saw very closely when Google launched their AdWords product in the early 2000s, and then we kind of got on the bandwagon of analytics quite early as well. And in 2012, I sold my then agency to Omnicom Media Group, which is actually where we then met Alan when I was based in London running Resolution for EMEA, while you were looking after Resolution brand globally. But basically, that's my background, and I already talked about the agency, so maybe Ilkka will introduce himself next.
Yeah, I'm Ilkka Puumala, the CEO and co-founder here at Dash, and yeah, my background is also from media agency side. So after graduation, I was fortunate enough to have Markus hire me to my first job, and yeah, to Resolution, and been basically on the performance media landscape since search and display advertising and programmatic, and just before Dash, I was leading programmatic the team for IPG, and yeah, but then Markus got me introduced like this idea of what about Amazon, and then yeah, I was happy to kind of again learn something new, and here we are. So
Excellent. And what we wanted to do a deep dive on today was really the world of Amazon e-commerce and specifically data analytics and data insights. I know from having talked to both of you, you're really passionate about the data side of Amazon and as you work with brands. Tell us a little bit about like Dash's unique differentiators and just how you think about kind of data strategies in the e-commerce world.
I think again we have to remind you that we live in a very primitive market. This is the year 5 pretty much for the industry here. So US market is 20-25 years ahead of us. So in a way we're in a very fortunate position that we kind of get all the cool stuff from you guys, and then we try to sort of apply it to our local clients that are, to be honest, they are relatively inexperienced, they are much smaller, and most of all, the whole sort of landscape isn't as busy as it is in the US market. But maybe Ilkka, you want to elaborate a little bit about the data approach that
yeah,
we have.
yeah. Well, naturally, of course, taking our background, we have a lot of experience, and our background is from very like data-driven world. So in that sense, of course, that's like very natural for us to take this in a similar way as well, and we of course right away, so that there was a lot of new things to learn. The world differs a little bit, like what metrics to look at when you're operating on Amazon versus like traditional like non-retail media. So, but definitely we're happy to see that there's a lot of things to use, and we've been trying to make our best in and taking advantage of all the data possible what is out there. And luckily, like Markus said, even though here the market is young, we can see that there's a lot of good stuff already kind of done outside of here. So we'll kind of get to pick the best apples, what has been brought from the tech world and all that to take advantage of that data. So.
Excellent. Well, let's actually, Marcus, let's go back to what you said before. I know, like from our previous history working together, and I know the Nordics and other digital performance channels were, just as advanced in my eyes as the U.S. And you always came up with innovative projects and campaigns for your clients. So, kind of walk me through what it's like in the kind of we'll call it the earlier days of Amazon and e-commerce, kind of in the Nordics, and kind of where you are in that evolution, and kind of how you're helping your clients, and like what are their day-to-day pain points, so to speak.
Yeah, I wish, and I actually thought we would be further in Amazon as well. And as you mentioned, I mean, the whole performance marketing industry sort of developed hand in hand. And the benefit we had here in the Nordics was that the markets were smaller, so you had to go deeper in order to get results. And that kind of, was really helping us to innovate different things and really make a mark. But when it comes to Amazon, I mean, the honest truth is that we started in 2018, and nobody wanted. I mean, everyone wanted to hear about Amazon, but nobody wanted to buy anything from us because they didn't think it was relevant. And it had to be on 2020 when we actually really started winning some business to us, because the companies realized that, well, Amazon might be a channel that they will have to be on, and they kind of the most advanced ones also saw that, okay, Amazon isn't exactly a simple one, so we might need somebody to help us in order to be successful there. And that's kind of where we still are in a way in the path of growing the business, because even though we are the largest agency in the Nordics, but we're still very small. We have helped over 100 clients, but if you compare our numbers or our clients' numbers to average client numbers in the US, you can remove 1 zero or even 2 zeros from the revenue side. So that's kind of what's in a way pushing us back. But I'm sure we will. I mean, we can see that Amazon is probably evolving into something like Amazon.eu, which is going to be then something that's comparable to Amazon.com. And obviously, then the whole game is going to be very, very different. But right now, most of our clients are operating in Germany, in the UK, and then some in the rest of the European markets. So this sort of comprehensive approach isn't there yet for everyone. I don't know if I answered your. Sorry.
So is your goal as an agency, as Amazon rolls out into more, kind of pan-European markets, do you see yourselves, or does Dash see itself as an agency that can help you get into these emerging markets? Clearly, you have the experience from the Nordics in doing that.
Absolutely, absolutely. So our products, our services, our processes are optimized to fast, efficient onboardings, and basically we onboard somebody all the time in some market. And that is kind of a different recipe you need, or different playbook you need in that kind of situation than you would need in a more established, already large market where you just basically compete with a relatively familiar set of competitors. Also, this is from the data perspective. I mean, the KPIs on the onboarding and the growth side are completely, not completely, but are very different from what you would have in the sort of more mature market. So in a way, we are super excited to actually get better grip to all the data that's available and get it better organized, because that is kind of the thing that's going to help our clients to grow. And when our clients grow faster than the market, they usually like the partner who's helping them to do that, and that puts us in a very good place.
Yeah, so let's dig into that a little bit more. So, I'm a brand that, maybe is in Western Europe, yeah, Western Europe right now, and I'm moving into some new emerging markets. Um, you consult with me along the way as to how to move into the markets, the strategy you should take, maybe what the Amazon or other marketplaces, what the shelves look like vis-a-vis competitors versus other markets. And then as you're going through this whole kind of consulting process and education process, like what are brands saying to you, and like when you're kind of starting to launch campaigns for them, like what are you showing them from a reporting, analysis, analytics standpoint, and how do you kind of walk them through this like curve and getting on board?
Um, I think there's obviously there's a set of KPIs that's very similar across every client going through the onboarding and the market growth. But I think every client has then their own special KPIs that they will have to track. Maybe Ilkka, you can go a little bit deeper into this one.
Yeah, and actually, I would say from our point of view, it's a little bit the other way around. We see more of like the Nordic companies actually, moving towards the Amazon markets in the Central Europe. We haven't seen so much of demand yet from the like Western European companies really having an interest of a local someone, like an agency like us, to help them to get to a Nordic market. So that's pretty much only Sweden at the moment. So in that sense, yeah, I would say Amazon is Amazon. So in that sense, exactly like the KPIs are very much similar. The ways of doing things on the platform, they are very much the same. So in that sense, then there is left basically kind of have a little bit of check on the market. Of course, like your basic kind of a market analysis, like what's the demands, what's the audience like, and all that, and looking into that then and trying to find out exactly like is that something that Amazon is going to be the right channel for you to make business at. So
Excellent. And I keep saying Amazon, but we're talking about marketplaces in general. Outside of Amazon, are there other marketplaces that you're currently utilizing to reach consumers?
Not really, no, no. We have nearly 100% of our dedication to Amazon. Really, it's there's other marketplaces, but they are rather small. So I would say that most brands should get their Amazon right first, and then they can start looking around. Amazon is 50% of the German e-commerce, the same for UK e-commerce. So just getting the Amazon right is tricky enough for most of our clients. You have to remember that marketplaces aren't that familiar in the Nordics. So our clients are learning a lot of new things just with Amazon.
Excellent. So here at Intentwise, we're fond of asking our clients, what is your data e-commerce strategy, or what is your overall data strategy? Tell me a little bit about when you're talking to your clients, like how do you get at the proper data strategies when you're either working with new clients and or kind of trying to take a client to the next level in their understanding of how to really win within the Amazon ecosystem?
If I start, so as anyone who's worked with Amazon knows that the drop from the most basic Google Analytics in the performance marketing to what is available from Amazon is massive. So in a way, we as data driven guys, we had to really push back our analytics approach for 4 years now, because we don't feel it's data driven if it's reports updated once a month or maybe some reports updated once a week. That's not what we see as being data driven. But right now, I mean, with this collaboration with you guys, a whole new world is opening to us. And that's why this is the right time to also talk about the data strategy. But I would rather have Ilkka explain about the data strategy in this case.
Definitely, I would say, as discussing about Amazon data strategy with clients, it's something that we don't maybe have it as direct as that, because also here we said many times, um, we are still very much on kind of a different kind of stage of educating the clients as well, because very often, like, or almost never, there is really like someone who is a marketplace or Amazon expert on a client side, and maybe even like talking about right from the beginning about the data strategy is something that is not kind of on the table. First, we have to, of course, have the moment where we learn about, you know, how Amazon operates, and then like what data actually is important, and how do we analyze all this, and then start to talk about exactly more about the data strategy. But of course, we as an agency kind of maybe kept that behind the curtain and try to, of course, work on that. That we have a data strategy for our clients, and have been trying to take care of, and that's also like part of why we here are also partnering with you guys, and now are working on the way of really like bringing more automation to our data collection, and building better solutions for clients, so that we can basically take care of that, and provide them suitable solutions. So far, I guess every Amazon agency out there has started from somewhere, and usually that somewhere is very much like running data on Excels and trying to combine using VLOOKUPs and build all that, and save them somewhere, like you can have some month to month comparison, or even year on year comparisons and all that, and that's what we've been also doing. But of course, we see that that's a lot of manual work and a huge bottleneck. So definitely, like we've been trying to offer very um, good solutions to our clients, and really look after, like what is the data that they need to be able to kind of track where their business is going, and make the right insights. But I hope, like now with this automation, we kind of course take all the work out of the data collection, and even like take it further with our what we can provide to our customers, in that sense that when we take the manual part of collecting the data, it just releases so much time of actually just providing much more variety on metrics and everything you can report. So I'd say that's usually how the discussion also goes at the with our clients, so that we first educate, we tell what are the main ones, but of course trying to always improve as we go further, and also they get more advanced around the world of how Amazon works.
Excellent. And are your clients, when you're showing them campaign results, are they more interested, because this is a new and emerging channel for many of your clients, are they more interested in just looking at the overall campaign results? Do they drill down at the ASIN or kind of product level, and try to understand, how this channel compares to other channels they might be advertising in? Or tell me a little bit about, like, when they're looking at the results from campaigns, like, what type of questions do you get related to the usage of Amazon?
Yeah, um, of course, yeah, everybody pretty much out there understands what is ROAS, so return on ad spend. That is of course something that all the clients are of course, like right from the beginning very aware of, and like to be looking at that as one of the main metrics. But yeah, so often advertising is thought as, for example, as a little bit different, separate section, and they would maybe like to look at like how is our advertising working, and then you look at how is our total business sales working, and I think in that sense, like the basics very much like come from the more like non-retail media, kind of how you're used to following it up. And then exactly, I think what you mentioned about maybe tracking like each product separate and looking really like to like really going into like a really detailed product focus analysis is something that it's not so common, but I guess you might be leading into that way of that that might be still like something that is really crucial, and exactly I think is part of again the things that we have here as work to educate clients as well, that that's one of the main factors that you actually how Amazon and marketplaces differ from, for example, your own e-commerce, where your e-commerce site is the place once you get the consumer there, you kind of have possibilities to drive them around, and it's kind of the whole performance of your own store. Whereas versus like on Amazon, it's really like the performance comes from the performance of individual products. So I think that's one of the main things again that uh, is there for us to kind of bring this information to our clients, and usually usually it happens that way, that we might be the first ones to really maybe put the focus on the analysis, that hey, let's look at these like smaller details and see really what's happening there.
Yeah, I think if I may continue a little bit, for many of our clients, advertising is the easily understandable part because it's most common or shares the most with search and other advertising channels that they have used in their past. But for us, the analytics is also super important when it comes to keeping an eye on the inventory, or basically getting more understanding. Like, we can see sales go down, but then we find that the reason is actually that we have been losing the buy box, and then we can basically identify that, okay, we have a rogue seller undercutting our price, which requires completely different actions than you would do on just sales going down, let's spend some more money on advertising kind of thing. So I think the need for analytics on Amazon is far greater than it is on other channels, but it's also far more complex. And I think that's kind of why we are so super excited about this new opportunities, because it's going to make not just our advertising work and the campaign work easier, but it's also going to make our overall sales performance uplift related work easier.
So, Ilkka or Markus, for either of you or maybe both of you, so we're heading into the second half of the year in 2022. What are you seeing into the e-commerce space, and what's evolving, what's changing, and where do you see the biggest opportunities for the second half of the year?
From Dash perspective, we'll be launching the new analytics product right after summer, and in the Nordic, summer means July, and July means that nobody's working. So when we're back in August, we'll launch the new product. So that's going to be very exciting times for us from that perspective. From our bread and butter Amazon perspective, we expect them to launch Denmark soon after summer as well. So yet another new platform to onboard. I mean, within the last year or two, they've launched Netherlands, Poland, and Sweden. So Denmark is it makes sense as an extension to that. And then from the big picture, obviously from the e-commerce perspective and retail perspective in general, is that is there going to be a recession? How long is the war going to be going on? And what is going to be the impact of the inflation that we're seeing right now? So these sort of major influencers to whole retail and economy landscape is going to be quite interesting. Then again, I feel that we are kind of on the right side, because what we are doing is still going to grow. It might not grow as fast as it used to, but it's still going to grow. So it's still going to be more efficient to sell products through Amazon than try to organize them through distributors across hundreds and thousands of stores across Europe. But I think the view from that perspective is quite hazy, at least.
I was going to switch topics and ask you a little bit more about one of the things you just brought up, which is, Amazon moving into new markets, whether it be Poland or any of the other markets you mentioned. Um, I'm fascinated by that. I don't have a lot of knowledge. I'm not very familiar how that works. So both from, your client's perspective, when they see Amazon move into other markets, like how do you walk them through that? And also just from the consumer standpoint, if you're in one of these markets where Amazon's quote unquote going live, so to speak, what's that like?
Yeah, I think from the American perspective, it's a whole new experience. Let's start with the fact that roughly year after Amazon launched in Sweden, they were finally able to offer prime and competitive fulfillment times. So before that, if you were thinking Amazon as you would think it from the US, you would look at a completely different kind of website, because they were able to fulfill your order in 7 days. And uh, most likely the product selection was 1/10 of what you guys are familiar with. So it's kind of Amazon starting small and slow, and then basically building on top of the good and tried and tested fundamentals they have in other markets. And what we do with our clients is that we sort of try to manage their expectations, that no, going to Amazon Sweden immediately is not going to change much in your sales figures, but it's actually going to put you in a good place, because once the consumers start using more and more, you will be in a good place because you were there first. And that kind of same goes across different markets. So that's kind of how it works from my perspective. Do you want to add something, Ilkka?
Yeah, and I would also say that the new emerging markets here in Europe and especially EU, it's kind of made very convenient in that way of like in perspective, like operational perspective, like the inventory management. So here we, for example, and we saw Sweden launch, which is also a EU country. So basically, all the sellers who have already like existing operations running through FBA um, on Amazon. So basically, you can pretty easily just like build your listings to the Swedish marketplace as well. And actually, Amazon was offering pretty much without any cross-border fees using fulfillment with Amazon to Sweden from, let's say, Germany warehouses or fulfillment centers. So in that sense, the expansions, it's not like, if you've been operating and building your business in the US and then you want to jump over to Europe, that's a little bit bigger thing to do. But within the EU markets, for example, it's of course much more agile and faster thing to make. And if you can really see that, even it's a small new marketplace, if that's like something that you can get the advantage like Markus was talking about, or you just otherwise it's important for you to have your customers find your products on Amazon, it's fairly kind of a easy thing to do.
One tip of the day though: do not trust them when they say, "Oh, don't worry, we'll take care of the translations." Brand owners should never let Amazon take care of the translations. I mean, as good as their algorithms are, but they made complete cock-ups when they translated products from German to Swedish, and that made headline news on how they had all these crazy, even offensive product names and product descriptions. So it's kind of it's a great service, but if you really care for your brand, do it yourself. Find a local agency who can help you to get the local language right, not a machine translation.
Right.
So it seems as though from what you just mentioned, I think that's always been true in other digital performance channels too. You want kind of local knowledge, local cultural knowledge, so that the translation comes through appropriately, and you, you represent your brand in the shelf space of Amazon.
That is very correct, Alan, because it's if we think where the classical, cock-ups are in the banner advertising, the banner advertising performs pretty poorly anyway. But on Amazon, if you have poor content, if the content doesn't feel right, people will not buy it. So basically, you have no conversions or very low conversion rate. And that's kind of, I would say, that's far more serious not to have that on Amazon than not have clicks on your banner ads. So therefore, um, I mean, I know a lot of the audience of this recording is from the US. Please remember there's more than 20 languages spoken in Europe, and pretty much every Amazon market requires their own content. It can be done on the same content master as US market, but you would still have to have a local native speaker to actually localize it for each of the markets separately. And that is the if you can't afford to do that properly, don't go to that market. Stay out of there because it's only going to make you look bad.
That's interesting. Yeah, the related to this audience, we actually have been modeling, and we have a number of people who follow us in Western Europe. I would say, kind of the non-Western European Amazon ecosystem is still, as you've mentioned, is still evolving. But we know through, as an example, through the Amazon agency partnerships, there's a large kind of minority of agencies that are all over Western Europe that are thriving and growing. So you have to, Markus and Ilkka, I want you to protect your space and grab your market share of brands both in Europe and throughout the US. So, well, thank you both for coming on today. This has been an excellent interview, and I certainly learned something, and I hope our audience will too. So I'm sure our audiences will love this Expert Connect. So thank you both so much for joining us today. And any final comments?
Well, thanks for having us, and I think it just an advice for all brands thinking, should I do this now or should I do this later? It's not going to be cheaper or easier, even if you push it further. So today is a great time to move, and tomorrow is pretty good as well. The best would have been yesterday. So obviously, we're here to help as well, and looking forward to all the wonderful adventures we'll have together with Intentwise as well.
Yeah, thank you for having us, Alan. It's been a nice chat.
Thank you both, and it's a wrap for Intentwise Expert Connect.